Hello, everyone. So the topic for this video today is a question that often comes up in my sessions with clients and elsewhere. People say to me, "Well, it's just not right. It feels like I'm just blaming my parents for everything. They really did the best they could with what they had at the time." So maybe this is something that you've grappled with. And I hope in this video now just to give my own thoughts on it. And please, if you have any of your own, please leave them in the comments section, because I think this is a really important one for and open to different opinions and discussion. So, let's start with that word blame. Blame is, I get the image of somebody just pointing a finger and saying it's all their fault. It's all mum and dad's fault. And this is the image that I think many of my clients have about what they're going to do in therapy or what therapy is about. It's about them kind of saying it's all their fault. They were rubbish, and now I'm healed. Well, that is completely the wrong impression to have, actually. However, there is a truth in that as well. You see, it isn't all mum and dad's fault. It just isn't. Because we know that this is a multi-generational transmission of wounds. The family system into which you were born, especially if it was a narcissistic one, and many people are realizing that their family had a narcissistic element in it. If that is the case, this goes back centuries. So no, in that sense, your mum and dad are not to blame, but the family line is to blame. However, it is also your parents' fault. You see, you wouldn't be experiencing the issues that you are having today if they had stepped up and taken responsibility for their own baggage. If they'd stepped up and decided, right, I need to be my best self for my children. How am I going to do that? What am I going to do to help myself with all these issues I have? Because they had them, for sure. That's why these issues are expressing themselves in you. Instead, often parents will have chosen the easier route, which was not to do that, just to kind of, sometimes even to have children, to be the remedy to their wounds, to keep up appearances, to hide, instead of going within. Now, many of my clients will say to me, yes, I get all of that, but the thing is, they didn't have the access to psychology and psychotherapy and all of that as we do today. So it wasn't possible for them to do that. Well, I wonder if we really look at that. Is that true? I mean, people have been healing and stepping up long before modern psychology. I mean, if we look back, even in biblical texts or other ancient texts, the theme of transformation, of conversion, of changing your ways has been an element of human history for so long. In fact, many of the lives of those people that stand out the most, they've been the ones that have taken charge and stepped up in their lives way before we had psychology. So I personally do believe that regardless of psychology, there is a call within each one of us, and we know it, to step up in our lives, there's a conscience within us that's kind of urging us to grow. And growth always comes with discomfort and pain, usually, unfortunately. But you see, what I believe is that many people avoid it, and they choose to avoid it. And this is what's been happening down the centuries in our family lines. People have been choosing to avoid, choosing just to get by, to stay with the comfortable, just not to grow. Because comfort is easier. And so what happens in that situation is our parents have a more sort of apathetic view of us rather than an empathetic, because they have shut down from growing themselves, choosing to grow themselves. They're unable to really empathize with us. They're not able to really understand the difficulties we're going through, because for them it's just about, they need to stuff that down even in us. Because if we're going through that, it kind of expresses what they're needing to do too, and that might be a bit too uncomfortable. So this is the key that I'm trying to get across in this video today. You know, the thing is, your parents may have done the best they could with what they had at the time, but for who? Was it really for you, or was it for them? And that's an interesting question just to sit with for a minute. You know, often if I have a client who's been through sexual abuse, I often think of this question. I think, gosh, what if I was to say to my client, you know, well, I'm sorry, he was just doing the best he could with what he had at the time. For who? No, he wasn't. It's just not true. So I think what perhaps might be the problem here is that we think by blaming our parents, we're choosing also not to take responsibility, that we're choosing to be victims. But that's not the case. You see, we've always allowed our parents the victim role. We've always put them in the victim role, and then sort of blamed ourselves. And we've forgiven them without much sort of accountability. But now we need to flip it around and see clearly how we were the victim. We really were. And when I say see clearly, we really, really need to see clearly. We have to have empathy for ourselves now. No more apathy. And apathy is the opposite of love. Apathy is like not bothered about how you're feeling or what you went through. And that's how many of us become when we're saying, oh, you know, but our parents had this and da, da, da. We lose it. We have apathy for ourselves, and we need to switch that to empathy for ourselves. So we need to be able to say, look, I'm sorry, this wasn't right. I'm sorry, this was a bit of a cop out. They shouldn't have done this. That was really unacceptable. Yes, they were wounded, but heck, I've had to go through, you know, I've had to go X, Y, and Z, and now, you know, maybe my life's been put on hold, or, you know, I'm in my 60s and I'm stuck in this awful relationship, you know, whatever it is. That's where it comes from. It comes from their lack of taking responsibility. So part of the work that we do with me is that we do encourage an accountability part when it comes to parents. So maybe blame is the wrong word, maybe accountability is a better one. But by doing this, we empower ourselves, and we begin to rise out of their story. We rise out of the multi-generational story, actually, because we're the ones that are willing to take responsibility for our lives. and not pass it on to the next generation again. So we're able to break the pattern of abuse and free ourselves from their wounds. So I don't know if that's been helpful or given you any sort of, I don't know, you probably had thoughts yourselves on this, if anyone's watching. So please do leave your comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your take on it. Because ultimately, once we are able to, first of all, put the blame there, we then no longer need to, and we are set free. We are self-differentiated, which is what this is all about. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow in another live. Take care. Bye now.